An entitled old jerk decides to block traffic as he demands that I move my semi-truck out of his way instead of him just backing up maybe 10 feet so I can finish my turn. Things escalated to the point where this guy called the police on me, saying that he was going to get me arrested for blocking traffic, but instead, he's the only one out of the two of us that ended up getting charged with multiple crimes. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a semi-driver by trade, and I see a lot of stupidity on the roads. But trust me, this situation absolutely still takes the cake. Last fall, I was on a pretty busy road making a left turn into a small 2-lane industrial park. It's a very standard move and a part of my regular route, and I've made this turn about 50 or 60 times before. With the available turning space and the length of my truck, the end of my trailer drags through the oncoming lane for maybe a few feet. It's very common on smaller roads, and it's not really a big deal. I waited till the space is clear, and if anyone approaches while I'm turning, they yield until I'm through with the turn. And this happens maybe 20 times a day. Well, not today though. Today, the world's most important man is out on the road, and he will stop for nothing, not even the laws of the road or physics itself. Halfway through my turn, this entitled jerk comes flying up the road. He screeches to a halt and lays on his horn. I can see that if I keep going through my turn, I will crush his car like a beer can with my trailer, so I just stop my truck mid-turn. This entitled jerk is honking madly, and I can see him screeching through his windshield, but I think to myself, okay, whatever. But at this point, I am wedged in place. If I go forward, I will hit this guy, and if I go backwards, I will be blind backing onto a busy road, and I would not do that for a winning lottery ticket. All that's left to do is set my air brakes and wait for the lead cake synapses in this idiot's brain to figure things out. But unfortunately, that was a fat chance. After a solid 15 seconds of laying on the horn, this entitled jerk puts his car in park and gets out to come storming up to my window. His fat face is the color of a tomato, and he starts to do that stupid thing where they shake their finger at you. Now, being the jerk that I am, I smile and wave at him, which just pisses him off even more. He climbs up the steps of my truck and tries to open the door. Then he starts knocking on the window when he figures out that it's locked. I roll the window halfway down and I put on my old retail customer service voice. I say to him, "Can I help you, sir?" This guy looks at me and says,
"You're in the way. You need to move right now."
I say to him, "Sir, I can't go forwards or backwards without hitting you or another car. If you would just back up a few feet, I'll be able to clear your car and be on my way." He just looks at me and says,
"I'm not gonna move. You're in my way. You're obstructing traffic."
But I respond to him by saying, "Well, I guess we'll just have to sit here then." I then pivot my feet, I throw my feet up on the console, and I pull out my phone. At this point, I'm blocking both lanes of traffic on this small road, and cars are backing up on the larger road to turn in.
"You're obstructing traffic and endangering people. I'm calling the police, and they're going to arrest you."
But I just say to him, "You go ahead and do that." And then I roll up my window without looking up from my phone for a second. He stalks back to his car, gets in, and starts yelling into his phone. As he's yelling at what I only assume is some poor 911 operator, who is at this point definitely not getting paid enough, I see a police officer coming from behind my truck and start walking towards my cab. She looks around, clocks the angry jerk on the phone and where he's parked, and climbs up onto my steps. She looks at me and says, "Did you hit his car?" I respond by saying, "No, ma'am." She then says, "Okay, so is he refusing to back up?" And I respond again by saying, "Yes, ma'am." She looks at me and then over at the guy freaking out in his car, and then she just gives out a sigh and says, "Okay, sit tight." She walks back and taps on this guy's window. He gets out of the car, gesturing at me and yelling at her. I can't hear what they're saying, but he's obviously getting angrier, and I'm starting to wonder if he's gonna have a stroke before he can move his car. By this point, 2 other officers have joined the conversation, and one of them, that looks massive with a bulletproof vest, starts leaning over this jerk and gesturing towards my truck. This entitled jerk gets back into his car, slams the door, backs up, and as I pass by, he gets back out of the car and starts looking at the ground as one of the officers pulls out a notepad. I come to find out from my friends working in the industrial park that he is a known nuisance in the area, and this was evidently the last straw for these cops, who hear from him about petty, stupid concerns every single day. They confirmed to me that he was hit with tickets for obstructing traffic, aggressive driving, and failure to yield. And the cherry on top was that his "Back the Blue" bumper sticker didn't help him one bit. So I'm honestly glad to see this guy get put in his place, because trust me, based on the way he was acting, he absolutely deserved it. Wow, it's insane to me that someone could be that entitled and so obtuse to the surroundings around them. It would have taken this entitled jerk maybe 5 seconds to back up just a little bit. That would have solved all his problems right away, and he could have avoided getting all these tickets and all these violations against him. him. And the fact that he's like a known nuisance to these cops and everybody around here, in my opinion, is just so much better, because now he's just never going to get a break. He's always going to be on their radar, and anytime he calls the cops, they're probably not going to believe him. They're going to see him as the boy who cried wolf or something like that. But I also love the way the original poster reacted to this. They didn't get angry and start yelling at this guy. They just leaned back and let this guy get angry himself by literally doing nothing, by sitting there and saying, oh yeah, just call the cops. They pissed this guy off more than they probably thought they would. But regardless, it is so nice to see people who act like this get put in their place in the way that they absolutely deserve. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled friend is angry with me that I hugged her boyfriend after meeting him for the first time. And despite the fact that she's hugged my fiance without me ever having a problem, she now seems incredibly upset. And at this point, I am at such a loss and I now just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my friend finally introduced me to her boyfriend after 2 years of being together. She kept me away from him all this time, almost like she never wanted me to see him. Their relationship is very weird to say the least, and the stuff she tells about him was bad, so I just can't figure out why she's with him. The time she plans on seeing him when I'm around, she keeps me far away from him. In fact, one time she kept me in her car as she got out to see him and made me promise her not to get out of the car to see him. She even suggested that she'll park blocks away from his house, and I told her not to do that because it would look bad. So it's clear to me that she just really doesn't want me near him. My fiance is in another country until August, and there were many times that she would tell me that we should wait until my fiance comes home for me to be able to hang out with her boyfriend. Before my fiance and I did long distance, he would hang out with me and my friends a lot, and every time my friend would see him, she would hug him as a way to greet him and as a way to say goodbye to him. Now, it's important to know that I did not see this as weird because I know that's very normal here in the United States. My fiance is from South Korea, so for him as a person, he doesn't like hugging anyone that's not me, but he would be respectful when she hugs him by gently patting her back. So last night was the night I met my friend's boyfriend for the first time, and it was very awkward to say the least. When we walked into the restaurant, he didn't hug her or show any display of affection to greet her, but instead he walked next to me and talked to me as we walked to our table. Now, the whole dinner was incredibly awkward as nobody was talking, so I did all the talking and it was bad since no one else said anything. Even my friend didn't talk at all, and she said she wasn't talking because she was so tired. So basically, I started all the conversations and asked questions to her boyfriend, and trust me, it really was as awkward as you think it sounds. When the boyfriend talked, he would just talk so quietly it sounded like a mumble, and my friend just didn't talk much, and when she did, she would ask me and her brother what we think of her boyfriend, almost like we had to answer that question right there in front of him. When she tried to show public displays of affection towards him, I noticed that he would just move away from her or seem very awkward. I mean, she's literally asking me and my brother what we think of her boyfriend right in front of him, and that's already weird enough. Like, why would you expect an answer? She would also tell us the story of how they met and ask us our perspective about her boyfriend, and I noticed that whenever she were to talk, he would just look as if he was disassociating. Needless to say, the whole dinner was the most awkward thing on planet Earth. Towards the end of the night, my friend's brother gave him a bro hug when they were leaving. I was leaving with my friend's brother since he was my ride, so I went in to give him a hug, but then I realized and I said, oh wait, high five maybe? But he said that he's cool to get a hug. As I was leaving with my friend's brother, I told him how awkward that was, and he told me not to worry. Well, when we were driving back home, my friend called to ask how we thought the night went, and then she said, I was surprised you hugged him, and she did not sound happy when she said that. I apologized and told her that it was stupid, and I just thought we were doing that because the brother went in for a bro hug. I apologized more after that, and even the brother doesn't understand why it's such a big deal. But also, there were times when she hugged my fiance to greet him and say goodbye to him. I don't know why it's an issue if she also hugged him. Now, I didn't mention that, but I thought about it and how that makes no sense. I feel like I handled this whole night incredibly wrong. So what was I supposed to do in this situation? I really need some advice on this, as I just don't know if I did something wrong, or if I'm the entitled one, or if it's just the other way around. What should I do? No, you didn't do anything wrong, because it sounds like your friend and her boyfriend are having like a lot of issues, and she's clearly just projecting those onto you. She would literally rather park around the block so that you don't see her boyfriend, instead of being like, oh, by the way, this is my boyfriend. Like, any kind of friend who would treat you like that is just super weird in my opinion. She clearly just doesn't trust you, you, and in my opinion, that is so inappropriate. So no, of course you didn't do anything wrong. Your friend is obviously very insecure and has a lot of problems, and that is something that's on her shoulders to deal with and not yours. Am I the jerk for asking my social worker to let me live with my grandma instead of my aunt? Because right now, my aunt is devastated by my choice, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, my mom lost custody of me 3 years ago. She has always had issues, and she's been in jail a few times. I'm a 15-year-old male, and I have no dad in my life, so I would go to my aunt's house typically until my mom got out and took me back. But then, just like that, she lost custody of me for real, and my aunt is the one who took me in. But unfortunately, my aunt was going through her own really difficult times. My uncle, her husband, had passed away, and she was left alone with her son, who's 10 years old. A few months later, she met a guy that I will call James for the sake of the story, and they hit it off and ended up moving in together and getting married by the end of that same year. James has a daughter who's 11 years old, and James's ex had divorced him a few years before and wasn't around for their daughter. She didn't remember her mom and was feeling mixed about the blended family. Sometimes she really just wanted a mom, and other times she just didn't want to have a new mom or share her dad with my cousin. The two kids could not get along, and living with them was absolutely miserable. My cousin misses his dad so much, and he's angry that his mom married again so quickly. He was mad that James's daughter was calling his mom by the name mom, and other times just telling her that she's not her mom and to please go away. And he was also angry that James was trying to do stuff for him that his dad used to do. And I'm talking stuff like going hiking or having like Father's Day events and stuff like that. It was such a mess that I was miserable being there in the middle of all of that. They were in therapy and everybody came back from that so unhappy. So in the end, I was talking to my social worker and I asked if I could please live with my grandma instead. Now, my grandma said yes and she was so happy. So I moved in with her last week. But my aunt was so hurt that I did that, and my cousin really misses me. And he asked if he could live with me and grandma too. He told grandma that he doesn't want to live with James or his daughter anymore, and that he would be way happier with her and me. And when my aunt heard about this, she was even more devastated. She told my cousin that he still had her, and he told her that he didn't want James or his daughter, and that he simply couldn't have her without them. They ended up talking, and he told her that he wished James and his daughter would go away forever and just never come back. And I think that some of my aunt's anger came from that and was directed at me over my cousin. But it made her get super angry that I asked to leave. She said that she was always there for me and would ask why I did want so badly to leave and all this other stuff. So seriously, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? Okay, for starters, I don't think you're the jerk at all for wanting to live with your grandma. It sounds like your aunt has a lot going on and the timing is just really bad because you're now stuck in the middle of a really blended family that clearly has a lot of tension. And if I was going through what you were going through, where you had a mom who literally lost custody of you and is in jail, then I would want a stable home as well. It's really not fair for you at all to sit there and deal with this, especially when you have your own troubles in front of you. And from the sounds of it, it seems like your grandma would be a better suit for you overall. And it's not like you don't love your aunt. I'm sure you love your aunt and all of your family and you're grateful that they took you in. But the circumstances just seem really tricky. And it is unfortunately going to be only at your expense if you do stay there. And I think your aunt is just taking it the wrong way because she's in the middle of this, so she doesn't have the perspective that you do. She doesn't see that this is a tumultuous time for you just as much as it is for her. So no, you're definitely not the jerk for going to your grandma's house instead of staying with your aunt. Because in my opinion, based on what you've described, I think that this would really be the best fit for you and everybody involved. My sister and her family visit my house regularly, but they treat my home like a hotel. And at this point, I'm so frustrated that I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for starters, I live in a fantastic location. It's near the beach and a short drive from hinterland. I have kids ages 8 and under, and I have a full-time job. My husband also works 13 to 14 hours a day. So as you can imagine, our hands are full. When my sister comes, I move one of my kids so that her and her family have a room big enough that they can use. But they leave wet towels on her bed, and I have addressed this with my sister before. However, she and her husband reacted quite immaturely to this, and were blaming one another instead of just taking responsibility and not doing it again. And even now, they still do this. They both shower twice a day, which is fine. It's not great, but what is frustrating is one of them has a 45-minute shower each time. They let food overflow on my stove, and they try and clean it up, and they just leave it stained. This weekend, I was left to do laundry, cook breakfast for them, breakfast for my kids, and at one point, also asked to hold their one child whilst I was doing all of that. They're also always late for events. I usually have to give them an earlier time to try and get them to places on time, and even then they can be quite late. They sleep in, lounge around, and then go out all day, coming home after the kids have gone to bed. My kids absolutely love and adore them, and are always disappointed that they aren't spending much time together. My sister and brother-in-law also have a tendency of telling the kids that they will come to their sports events and then not showing up. My brother-in-law also likes to play pranks. He called me at work when I first started and actually pretended that there was a house fire at my home. I was stressed, and when I tried to address it, I got blamed for making it awkward. I've asked him not to prank me, but he just says he only does it to those that he loves. And I was like, please, I don't appreciate it, with him eventually stopping for a while. My youngest is also behaviorally challenged, which is exacerbated dramatically when they are here. So would I be the jerk if I set ground rules to their visits? Namely that towels stay in the bathroom, their showers can only be 10 minutes max, and they can't stay more than 2 days? What would be a tactful way of laying these ground rules out? What should I do? Okay, for starters, in my opinion, I don't think you would be the jerk at all for setting ground rules in your home. This is your place after all, and you want it to be respected and used properly. But on that note, there's also nothing wrong with telling them, hey, we don't have room for you and you need to get a hotel. They really sound like they're overstaying their welcome, and that is not fair for you or your family at all. You're trying to live a normal life. And yes, you live in a fantastic location, and you're right by the beach, and you have all these cool things at your fingertips, but that doesn't mean that they should just go around and do whatever they want. There has to be some kind of ground rules if they're gonna be there. And hopefully, if you decide to set up these ground rules, they're able to see where you're coming from. Because what you just described honestly sounds pretty miserable. Am I overreacting for getting upset about the things my dad says about my mom? Because it's all been really bothering me, despite the fact that he says that I'm overreacting. So right now I'm so frustrated and I just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for starters, I decided to stay with my dad in Arkansas for a while because he recently got a knee surgery and he is having a hard time getting around. My dad and his girlfriend decided to come to church with me today, and I come to find out that it was the same church that him and my mom got married at. Anyways, the pastor was asking how long I was going to be in Arkansas for, and I said I didn't have an estimated time for now, but that I will be going to Florida with my mom when the time comes. So my dad was like, yeah, she grew up here, so her mom is really familiar with the area. So the pastor was like, oh, okay, I might know your mom. What's her name? And my dad cut me off and literally threw my mom under the bus. He was like, yeah, well, her mom and I have been married 3 times now. She was married to guy number 1, and then married to me, and then took my daughter 1,000 miles away from me and took her to Florida when she was 11. So now she's married to a new guy. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this new guy, as my dad put it, by the name of Jay, and we'll call my mom Valerie. Valerie and Jay are not their real names. Now, here's the thing. My mom is so ashamed that she's been married 3 times now, and she does not like talking about it. And one of the ladies overheard my dad talking and rose her eyebrows in shock. She then said, wow, this woman's really been around. But here's the thing. My mom is not at all proud that she's been married that many times at all. She is so deeply ashamed of it, and I feel like it was no business of my dad's to bring that up. All he had to say was that her name is Valerie. He could have used her legit official maiden last names before any of her marriages, and the pastor would be familiar with her because a lot of her relatives live in the same area. I tried to confront him about it because I thought it was literally so rude of him to say that to try and make my mom look bad, but he does this all the time, trying to make her look like a crazy person. So I was trying to build the nerve to talk to him about it, and I said to him, why did you have to tell the pastor that mom was married 3 times? What was that all about? Do you not know how ashamed of it she is? And you really want to rat her out to some guy that you just met? You need to watch what you say. Well, the next thing you know, he was laughing so freaking hard at me and said that I have a lot to learn. He was like, it's really cute that you, a 21-year-old, is trying to give someone like me, a 71-year-old, any kind of advice. I said to him, I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just telling you to stop telling people about mom's marriage history. That was seriously not your place. He then said to me, these church people are insane. They think everything is a sin. I mean, I don't even know how you like it there. I said to him, Dad, it's not the people in the church that think divorce is some ginormous sin. It's just stated in the Bible, and I will show it to you if you want proof. Just give me a break and stop making fun of the people of the church that I go to. I don't say anything about people at your church. Stop throwing mom under the bus because she never says anything bad about you. Now, seriously, I just need to say that I love my mom so much, and I didn't mean to, but I got really emotional and I started crying, which I absolutely hate, by the way. My dad then says, you are quite literally overdoing it, overreacting, and making this a big deal. Those people are not gonna care about your mom getting remarried. Just drop it for crying out loud and quit your crying. Your mom is fine, so stop bringing it up. But I said to him, Dad, for the love of God, don't tell me that I'm overreacting. Don't tell me that at all, because it really makes me feel like I'm a burden and I can't talk to you. I'm not blowing it out of proportion. I'm just telling you what's on my mind, which is what you are supposed to be doing as a father. Now, I don't even know how, but he somehow changed the subject and made it all about Jay, who is my stepfather. He was like, I'm also getting tired of you talking about Jay. It's always Jay this and Jay that. It's all about Jay. I said to him, Dad, I hate to burst your bubble, but Jay is actually a huge part of my life, and you have no say-so to giving an opinion about him. He then proceeded to say that his girlfriend is saying that she thinks it's weird that I talk about Jay all the time, much more than I ever talk about my dad. And in response to that, I said, Dad, no offense, but she needs to keep her mouth shut. She doesn't even know me or Jay in the slightest. Besides, the same way I talk about Jay to you over here is the same way I talk about you over in Florida to Mom and Jay. So get that out of your head. That's just ridiculous. Just say you're jealous and please just drop it. So in conclusion, he made my mom look bad today by talking about her behind her back. And he may not say it, but I can tell he's jealous of Jay by all means. I could have easily said to my dad that the reason why he is married 3 times is because he cheated on his first wife and my mom, and everybody knows it. But he doesn't know that I know that information. And I actually will be surprised if he keeps this thing with his girlfriend going. So seriously, am I overreacting in this situation? Am I the one that's taking this out of line? My dad always makes me feel like I'm some sort of kid and just diminishes my feelings. And I really hate to say it, but I feel like coming to Arkansas may have been a huge mistake. All of our conversations end this way, and I feel like I'm about to hit my breaking point, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, you're definitely not overreacting. Like, the things your dad said about your mom is completely inappropriate. There's no rational reason for your dad to be bringing up those marriages, besides the fact that he's just salty that she's married to somebody else. Like, it really seems like this is what's actually going on, and in my opinion, that is not fair in the slightest. So if anything, and I think this might be the only silver lining, I think it's really good that you stood up for your mom, especially when your dad was trashing her like that, because all that information was not needed. And you said it best in my opinion. You don't bring up the fact that he's been married 3 times, so for him to be like, oh yeah, she was married 3 times, is like really insane to me and so hypocritical, because that easily could be spun against him at the drop of a hat. So no, you're definitely not overreacting, because from the sounds of it, those things definitely needed to be said. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.